Just when you think the sweet embrace of death is going to take over this channel, there's always going to be, unfortunately, another AniTuber making something completely stupid and expensive out of nothing. And by expensive, I mean a taxation on your brain cells. I suppose the positive is here, though, is that we don't have to watch an entire video and can cut just right to the segment that we want to be. You know, courtesy of the guy himself, the Cartoon Cypher. Courtesy of the Cartoon Cypher himself, he already gave us the timestamp to go ahead and skip to, and he wants us to be respectful and open-minded. Well, that's all you're going to get here, and maybe you'll just get some insults thrown at you because I'm just going to be real. I don't know why we have to keep arriving back at blackface again, but we are here yet again. One of the important things to note going into this video is that if you're a regular viewer of mine or any of the listed members like Pokemon Red 12 or Hey I'm Turtle or Rainbow Dortega, then thank you for becoming a member first of all. But if you're a common viewer around here, then you know that my stances are pretty clear. I don't really like to sugarcoat anything in regards of what I believe to be true or my stances on things, and they don't really change. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, and that one I'll never move on. I think that it's an assault on all of my senses, and you can't convince me otherwise. But I just want to be very upfront that this video may be the most inclusive NECRO video you've ever seen. And I say that with a little hint of irony, but ultimately it's something that I think that we can all come to agree on, that no matter who you are or what you look like, it doesn't really matter because cosplay by the end of the day is self-expression. Me? I don't like to cosplay because have you ever seen a dad bod type of individual try to fit into anything that's supposed to be remotely attractive? It doesn't work out all that great.
何か冷たいもの飲みま。
サンキュー、飲む飲む。外やばい、マジ汗だくだし。
真っ黒。
As you can see, we're already off to a great start. The Westerner is very uncomfortable by what he sees in video.
本当はファンで塗ってんの。体にも使えるやつ。
そんなことできるんですね。
そうだ、ごめんなんだけど、シャワー借りていいかな。汗かきすぎてちょっとやばい。
はい。
Yep, cue the Anakin meme.
You were the chosen one!
Now, I don't want to feel like a stick in the mud when it comes to the rest of this video, but I kind of want you to hang on to the fact that he wanted to play this meme, because it does kind of become a little bit relevant later on.
Okay, obviously, if the end of the last video was any indication, I knew this was coming. I had a feeling this was coming based on the opening, and it's actually kind of interesting that a lot of people didn't really seem to catch this tan character in the opening and not kind of piece together, oh, wait, is Kitagawa going to cosplay that? Is she going to cosplay it like that? How is that going to work?
No, I think, in fact, people were probably more excited that they got new content for the thing that they enjoy, and it doesn't look like you enjoy any of this. I'm talking clearly about the episode that he's going to bring up. He's probably enjoyed it before this. I don't really care.
As I mentioned before, I have the manga right here. My girlfriend bought all the volumes because they wanted to cosplay Kitagawa and wanted as many references to Kitagawa's design as possible. So I read it in preparation for doing these reactions, and literally the last chapter ends with this and makes it very clear that it is not a tan, it is foundation. In fact, it is foundation that is very, very similar to the foundation that I use, which is several shades darker from her natural skin tone. And to say I was upset about this was an understatement.
Well, I guess you can add yourself into the minority of people that actually cared that much. I think that most people, when they saw that, they were pretty enamored by her. They really liked the look of this character with her skin just a little bit darker, even if from the foundation. But you, however, you took issue with it. And we're going to get into the reasons why, because you're going to dump them all over the table and then expect us to pick the pieces up and slap it all together.
I tweeted this as soon as the episode went out, and boy, was Twitter interesting for the next 2 days.
How about you get off of Twitter and go outside and literally touch grass? You can touch grass now. It's that time of the year.
And then I still had to write an episode review of this for Anime News Network.
I see, so you're a reviewer, and you for some reason decided that you wanted to go ahead and cover this entire series on Anime News Network, the people who are kind of notorious for not really taking away anything of meaning from a series. But I can see where you reviewed this, and it might just not be your best take ever, especially if you have to follow it up with a video like this for about 20 minutes talking about how upset you were about a character being a little bit darker skinned than usual.
I wasn't really sure how to approach this because this is a very common practice in a lot of East Asian cosplay circles. Hell, Eastern in general cosplay circles. There are a couple of European cosplay circles, Russian cosplay circles, and various different Asian cosplay circles that are very open and comfortable with darkening your skin tone for the sake of cosplaying a character.
I would like to chalk this up to something that's a little bit more up your alley, but this is a lot of your Western sensibilities, and I say that as a Westerner. You see, a lot of these other regions, they love to do things for the sake of authenticity because most of the time they can, and if they can't, then they make adjustments to do so. And if you happen to be anywhere in the Western world, then you end up like the one lady who tried to cosplay a character from Apex Legends, and you get effectively canceled and banned. So I can see that as the slippery slope, and I don't think that I would wish that on one of my worst enemies. But if you want to cosplay whatever you want, I don't think anyone really has a problem with it. And if they do, that is more about their insecurities than the person that wants to do the cosplay. And you should know this because you're a cosplayer, but I guess we have to have one of those weird opinions that don't have to fall in line or they have to go against the grain for some reason because this is the thing that we've approached.
I cannot speak to everybody on the planet.
That's a good thing.
I can only speak to my personal discomfort with what goes on in the media I consume.
And you know, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I believe that everyone should be able to put out their opinions about how they feel about something. I mean, it's something that we've all been doing for the longest time. But at the same point that we're at this right now, I think that some opinions should probably just not be broadcast to show how stupid you are. And if you're wondering, well, NECRO, you're being pretty rude, don't worry, the rest of this video is an assault on all of my senses.
So at the end of the day, I'm just going to focus strictly on how I feel about this scene, because this is the reason why you're all here, right? To have a black cosplayer explain why he's not comfortable with some people using incredibly darker foundations for the sake of cosplaying.
No, I came here to laugh at you.
Now, even though I didn't mention this in my initial posting, or even in my review, a lot of people just seem to think that I was upset about this because it's blackface.
Don't worry, if you are a scholar of the English language, prepare to be blown away by how we're going to redefine and change the term blackface.
And yes, a lot of people do associate practices like this with the act of blackface. Many counter that by saying, oh, it's not blackface because blackface was always meant to be an intentionally racist caricature. Obviously, Kitagawa isn't trying to be racist here, and by extension, the writer isn't trying to be racist here, especially since they are darkening their skin for the sake of showing respect for a character.
Yes, she wanted to show respect for Veronica, and have it done properly. Otherwise, it's just some woman in a weird piece of clothing. And I believe that that's where a lot of the cosplay things come into play, is that they want to be accurate. And if having the skin color be that way because foundation, then I say go for it. And who am I to say that they can't do a thing? Do you see where this starts to be an issue? Is that you start policing other people about what they can do? I mean, if they're being intentionally racist, yeah, you can point that out. But do we really have to sit here and make a video about an anime character that wants to cosplay an anime character?
And I do agree with that to a point. Nothing about the scene or anything that I've read really insinuates that the writer or the characters are trying to intentionally do anything in a way that demeans other people of darker skin tones. And yes, it's obviously not a caricature.
So let's go ahead and hammer out some of these really ridiculous points, because I think that this really speaks to the character of you more than it speaks to the character of the people that left all of these weird comments that you were talking about. For one, this image where you put this not a fan of the fact that the character is kind of framed as this angry, rebellious, slave-like character, you could argue that has more demeaning connotations towards darker skinned people / characters. Okay, let's go ahead and break this down really quick. The character that she is trying to cosplay as is an in-universe not Ramlethal Valentine named Veronica. And if you know anything about the lore of Guilty Gear, because not even I know that much, Ramlethal is not black. So, are we really trying to stretch this out by saying, well, this character looks darker skinned? They obviously must be a slave-like character. When you put out ideas like that, then it becomes a little bit of an issue from your end. If anything, you can watch episode 10 all over again. Prisoner Veronica is a character that Marin likes, and it's something that looks a little bit like someone trying to cosplay Ramlethal. Again, if that's what you're picking up out of it, I would dare to say that that makes you a little bit more conscious and racist about it, because no one else seemed to care or think that about it. The same people that think that orcs must somehow mean black people in a fantasy setting. That's the weirdest thing that I've ever seen someone try to throw into this as a way to say that this might be racism. This is a racism, even though they're not being racist. Now, do you see that point at least?
But I do think that a lot of people overlook the fact that it's not just the caricature and the actual physical portrayals of blackface that play a part in what made blackface so offensive. To me, the thing about like the whole black history of blackface and how it connects to things like this is the whole idea of treating skin tone like a costume.
Because of the limitations that you want to put on what people can and cannot cosplay because they may not be the right skin tone, then you can no longer cosplay any anime characters because you are not their race. Because if you try to emulate it, then you're trying to make a costume out of their race, and that would be offensive, wouldn't it?
Because that's what it was, right? Back then, it was a lot of white people donning on makeup to play the roles of these black caricatures in media, whether it was television shows or plays and stuff like that. The idea was that, oh, we're not going to let a black person actually portray themselves or anything. We are instead going to portray them for them, and we are going to show our interpretation of how we think they are.
Okay, so I guess my question still is being out there in the ether. What does that have to do with this show? Because none of the characters are racist, and if you picked up that them being in shackles and being a prisoner was only exclusively limited to being a darker skin tone, that's you being racist. And I would dare to say that even this entire argument of what you're trying to spin for blackface still doesn't prove your point at all. I know this may be a little shocking for you, but back in the days when blackface was a little bit more prevalent, that was a thing of the times. Back then, there was no civil rights movement. Back then, everybody knew that the Negroes were oppressed by the white people. In America, anyways. Everywhere is a little bit different. But that's a little bit of our history. Now, after we got civil rights, that's when things started to change. And then we started to have more black presentations and more black-made things. I kind of already covered this in a previous video, so I'm not going to go on this too long. But back then, we didn't have the civil rights movement. Now we have it, and people are now a little bit more equal than we used to be. I think that there's still some discriminations that happen, but not quite on the level that you think that it does.
And that's kind of the thing that bothers me. Now, you could argue, oh, but how is wearing your skin like a costume any different than, say, changing your eye color, or wearing a wig, or wearing fake boobs or something like that? It's all body modification at the end of the day, right? So why shouldn't skin tone be a similar avenue with that? And yes, if we did look at everything in a vacuum, on paper, that makes sense.
Maybe we should start looking at things in a vacuum to keep stupid people like you at bay. How is this going to be an argument that you're gonna go, but at the very end of? There is no but here.
Unfortunately, we can't look at this only on paper. We do have to kind of look at it in more of a cultural context, or even just in the context of socially how people are viewed in the cosplay community.
Do you know what sounds great on paper but is awful in execution? Communities. Artist communities, cosplay communities, all of these things have communities next to it, and you would think that people, no matter how different they are, can come together with a common love for something. but instead it ends up being the weirdest circle jerk of people that actually hate you, regardless of who you are. And if you think that every community suffers from this, then you, congratulations, have won the prize. Because every community does this, and it's not just these creative types either.
Because, unfortunately, at the end of the day, colorism is still a thing.
Colorism is when anime character decides that she wants to look a little bit more tan. Are you really doing this right now?
So the idea of somebody who naturally doesn't have to deal with the everyday persecution of waking up with that skin tone every day, donning it for a few hours for the sake of some aesthetically pleasing cosplay, and then taking it off without having to deal with what it means to live with that skin tone, yeah, I'm going to be a little uncomfortable about that. Is it ignorant, and do I think it kind of perpetuates or turns a blind eye to a lot of the racial stigmatisms that go on in everyday life? Yeah.
Maybe the Guardian was right. Maybe we still do have a weird anime fans being racist problem, and maybe it's from the people that you would least expect. I think that no matter what your skin color is, you can cosplay whatever you want. How people perceive it is completely up to them. And you won't be able to change people's minds. I do agree about that. But at what point, Mr. Cartoon Cypher, whatever cosplay guy, at what point do we say, these things are kind of just not even that big of a deal? Because it really isn't. When I think about people that want to do cosplay, I never think about, well, only white people can do this cosplay, or maybe only black people can just cosplay their characters. It's actually the furthest thing from my mind. It's where can I get all this good anime merch from, because I really just want to spend some money. So where did you get this from? I don't think anyone cares, and even if they have to put on foundation to look a little bit darker, or as dark as you claim that they want to be, I don't think that that has any bearing on my life whatsoever. And it doesn't disrespect me if they want to be my same skin color. It's really not that big of a deal. I can still go out to the grocery store, I can still buy products, and I can still do anything that a regular person does, however you want to label that. That's completely up to you. But that's just where we are in society. We're already progressive enough that I can still do everything that everybody else does. The argument could then shift to, well, Necro, why don't you think about the other people that might be offended? Well, my answer is very simple, viewer of mine. I don't care. I don't care what other people think about anything else that would not affect me directly. If someone says, man, you know what? I want to go cosplay this black character and I want to eat Brussels sprouts. And be like, you know what? I don't like Brussels sprouts, but you go ahead and have at it. And that would be the end of it. Because that's all that really matters by the end of the day is just that. I don't know why we're making this a big deal. Oh, well, they can just wash off their foundation, their skin color, because it's a costume. You can't do the same. Yeah, I don't think I want to. And maybe this is a very boomer take of mine. I'm sorry, this is like a long me talking segment. But maybe this is a weird boomer take. But I am perfectly comfortable in the skin that I'm in. And it's all about loving yourself first before you can go do the things that you love. Maybe that's just, again, a weird boomer take. But I don't have to worry about if I'm going to be white today or if I'm going to try to act black, because some days I feel like I want to listen to some anime music OPs and I'm just like, oh, what? This is it today. Or sometimes I feel like I want to listen to something that makes me want to go to the east side of DC and shoot up some cousin's house. I don't know. It's really up to you. Man, this segment got actually kind of racist. Sorry, guys.
Now, I know some people are going to argue, oh, that's just your Western sensibilities. Just take the show for what it is and stop trying to force your opinions on it. To which I would respond, I'm not forcing anything. I'm literally just expressing how this makes me feel.
Someone's going to roll into my comments and they're going to say exactly what you're saying. So I'll go ahead and just tell you that I think that your opinion is actually stupid. That's not to say that you're not entitled to your own opinion. I mean, sure, you can feel whatever way you want to about it. But to a normal person, they probably aren't thinking too much about what someone wants to cosplay as. I'm not looking at every single cosplayer and going, no, you can't do that. Your boobs aren't big enough. Sorry, sweaty.
In fact, there were a lot of people responding to this by saying that, oh, it's just gal or gyaru makeup. And that actually this should be celebrated because gyaru style and culture is seen as a rebellion to that fair skin mentality. And I've seen a couple of conflicting reports on this. There are a couple of different subsections of gyaru and gal culture, and not everybody who does it for the same reasons. There are some people who do it strictly in a fashion sense. There's some people that do it as a rebellion to that fair skin mentality. I don't know. It's kind of weird that people are using that as an argument because it kind of just further highlights the fact that there is a colorism issue. Like, why is dark skin seen as a form of rebellion in any place around the world?
I was going to make like a little bit of a longer segment, but I'm just going to ask, who died and made you the cosplay police?
Kitagawa can be considered a gal, considering like her style and the way that she talks. But no, this is not gal makeup. This is specifically her putting on a darker foundation for the sake of cosplay. I mean, you could argue that she's just using foundation to shortcut what she would look like if she did take the effort to tan herself. But here's the thing. If she did tan herself, she would at least have to live with and walk around with that skin tone for a while.
Yeah, and people would still think that she just got a pretty wicked tan. Have you ever seen any anime where there's not been a tanned character that is from Japan? Or is this your first exposure to it? I mean, you do consume the media, but do you consume any of it besides what is seasonal? I dare you to go back to literally any anime from maybe the 90s. Hell, you could even go back as far as the 80s, and you're going to find tanned characters that are Japanese. I'm not really seeing where this is an issue. A whole lot of this video is a very big non-issue.
I don't know, there's a good chance that she could be perceived differently from people because of that.
No, because up here in the real world, we don't really fucking care. People are free to do whatever they want, and it's only the people that are terminally online like you that like to think that people are going to react a certain way or that they should take a stand against something, when this is just nothing more than a simple cartoon made by the Japanese people on their own island. Stop being a shithead.
Foundations and spray tans, you can just wipe that stuff off, but a semi-permanent alteration to your skin or being born with a darker pigmentation compared to most people, that is something that you have to live with, and unfortunately, it's a lot harder for some people to live with that than others.
I got blocked for this opinion, so I'll tell you in this video. One of the things that I think people forget is that people don't necessarily look at your skin color, but they look at how you carry yourself, the things that you do, and the way that your appearance is when you have clothes sagging off of your ass. Those types of things make people look at you a little bit funny, not because you might be a little bit darker.
I don't know, maybe a part of it comes down to the fact that a lot of anime fans unfortunately do kind of fetishize Japanese culture as like this pristine, isolated area that isn't touched by anything else that goes on in the world, when that couldn't be more further from the truth. Japanese people do know about things that go on outside in the world. There are various different groups that are still fighting for equal rights within Japanese culture itself, like LGBT groups, and yes, even darker skin groups.
Forget Twitter. I think that you almost intentionally made up these people. Because, I mean, the people that are serious anyways. There are people that LARP on the internet where they believe that Japan is just this little isolated bubble that people just can never penetrate because it's, made up of the glorious Japanese people and all they are, based and red-pilled. But in reality, they all have conflicting ideas. That's what it means to be an individual. Some people like things that are a little bit more right-leaning and some like things that are a little bit more left-leaning. No one's denying that. And also, again, what does this have to do with an anime character cosplaying as an anime character?
So pretending like Japan is this pure conservative thing that we are not allowed to comment on, I don't know, that feels a little bit limited and at worst backwards thinking to me. I think we can be critical of media as well as open to people's different reactions of media based on their own personal interpretations inferred by their own personal experiences. That's just kind of how appreciating art works. Like, obviously you can't get too far off base, but there are a fair amount of interpretations you can infer on a piece of work. And whether you like it or not, sometimes those interpretations are based on the way we view the world, and the way we view the world can be determined by how the world treats us, or at the very least, how the world views us.
No, this isn't an us thing. This is a you thing. I don't need to worry about interpreting anything any type of way. If I see something that I like, then I watch it. And if I see something that I don't like, then I will proceed to not watch it. It's very simple. Like, I will make general observations on things like on Twitter or maybe in a video or something like this. And I'll say, you know what, that looks like dog shit. I'm not going to watch that. And then there will be a whole bunch of people to cry out, Necro, it's not even out yet. But I don't have to care. Like, I don't even care if the whole message is you're supposed to not like these characters. Yeah, I don't care about that. I think this is pretty Kino. In fact, I'm playing through a very Kino game that came out on the Switch today. So look out for that review somewhere. Not here, but somewhere. But again, I don't have to interpret anything. I see what it is, and I will tell you if I like it or if I don't. I don't have to really care what other people think. And that's not to say that you can't be critical of media that you consume. By all means, please do. But you and your ilk, the AniTubers, love to tell everyone how they should be consuming it the right way. And to be real with you, I don't think that they really fucking care either.
If anything, and yeah, this might actually surprise some people, I don't think we should use the term blackface during these discussions. Not because I don't think it has any connection to blackface at all, but because more and more people are using the term blackface as sort of a smokescreen or sort of like this loud buzzword that kind of distracts from the overall conversation.
But you can't really say that and then use blackface the entire time before this. I mean, if you want to call it blackface, I mean, sure, that's the pretty general term, but now you want another term, so that way it's not as racist and you can look a little bit smarter.
When I posted my episode review, I was very careful not even to say the word blackface, and within 3 days, the forums for that show got over 100 comments. I wish my other reviews got that many comments, but I digress.
At this point, just say that you're doing it for the engagement and the clicks, because at least if you're upfront about it, no one would really care, and I think that then maybe they'd be like, okay, this guy's actually in it for the money. But you can say that about me. I'm in this for the money, because YouTube, to make money, it's pretty good. I enjoy it because it helps pay my bills, and it also helps me get my sweaty man JPEGs from WWE Champions. And if you know what that reference is, then I think you might know.
And a lot of them were of people saying that, oh, he was offended because he thought this was blackface. I don't know, I feel like there should be a subsection word for this type of cosplay portrayal or this type of costume portrayal where you use a skin color or a race in place of a costume.
Yeah, we call it cosplay because it's costume play. Are words not good enough for you, or do we need to make this a little bit more segregated?
I don't know. I would love if we can just land on a term like that, because if we can distinguish the specific thing that we find insulting about having our skin color be used as a costume like this, then I think it would be easier to have these conversations. Or at the very least, it might make some conversations feel less loud and cluttered, because that way not everybody is screaming blackface and instead focusing on the specifics of what aspects of that practice's history specifically fall back and inform the actions of today.
But the regular person doesn't care. In fact, there's nothing you can do to stop them, even with this great conversation of yours. There's nothing I can say that makes people go, you know what, maybe Necro's right. I should just do whatever I want to do. In a real world, people would already be doing that anyways, but, you know, I digress. But again, it doesn't matter. If I were a mildly attractive woman and I had the ability to make my own OnlyFans and I could just make cosplays and just be a few shades darker, you bet your ass I'd be doing it. Unfortunately, if you go to my OnlyFans, there's just feet pics, and it's only one picture. Maybe I should do more pictures.
I would like this to be an open conversation, because at the end of the day, I'm just one dumb cosplayer on the internet sharing how he feels.
He most certainly got the dumb part, right?
You can choose to continue watching this video. You could have stopped before you even got to this point. You could downvote and comment something annoying or frustrating, or, I don't know, call me white, because clearly I am.
You see, here's the thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand about not just me, but in situations like this. It's all information based. And because I know that you're obviously not white, I kind of just don't care. I don't think it's ever come up that I didn't like a certain content creator because of their race. And I think that that still applies here. If you're a shithead, you're just kind of a shithead.
But yeah, I don't know why people should get uncomfortable with me expressing discomfort about one particular aspect of a show, saying that I should keep like my opinion out of it or keep my personal experiences out of it, when in reality, a majority of the reason why I like this show is because I'm able to inform so many of my own personal experiences on it.
People weren't mad that you gave your opinion. In fact, I would say that they were more mad that your opinion's fucking stupid. It's mainly based off of the fact that you want to tell other people what is not and what is considered blackface, and then continue to call this show a little bit racist and how it's unsettling that this character who is Japanese, by the way, they're not Western, wants to make their skin a little bit darker for the accuracy of cosplay and how that's a bad thing. But you can use foundation and you yourself can cosplay a character for accuracy. That's how hypocritical you are. And this isn't something that I just made up. You said it in your video just a few, I don't know, dozen minutes ago.
Just because I ended up coming across an instance where my personal experiences reflected something negative that I don't like about the show, I don't think has any greater or less value than the instances where I praised the show.
No, I will dare to say that this has less of an impact. It has less meaning than anything else you've said in this video so far, which you can see it, like, you know, all this stuff. But in these instances, it kind of does make it a little bit lesser quality of an argument, because the whole show itself is great, even for this scene that you're uncomfortable with. This whole episode of blackface, yeah, that's kind of stupid because it doesn't really matter. It kind of doesn't. And accepting that cosplay is for everyone means that you're going to have a bunch of people that do things a little bit differently than you. Some people will wear foundation. They will look a little bit darker, or they might look a little bit lighter. And you're just going to have to face the facts that that's a thing. And if you want it to change, then I don't think that you were truly a cosplayer after all.
Now, I know to some people the very idea of me taking other people's feelings into consideration is a slippery slope. It's like, oh, if you have to be so conscious about other people's feelings when it comes to appreciating art or showing off your love for a character in cosplay, where does it end, you know? Why should we limit ourselves based on what other people say or think? Shouldn't we be allowed to do what we want? Isn't that part of the whole cosplay is freedom or freedom of speech mentality? And you know what? You're absolutely right. I can understand the desire to not limit yourself based on what other people say.
You would figure that a smart person would have stopped the entire sentence there, but unfortunately, we're dealing with someone that's, you'll see.
I have two counters to that, though. The first one is, that's already happening anyway.
Good. Then that means that they're not listening to you. That means that they are expressing themselves how they find fit. And I don't think that you can really counter that with anything, unless you're trying to say that you have a means to stop them.
I have unfortunately been very lucky as someone with not as huge of a cosplay social media presence compared to others. So I very much receive a fraction of the hate and discomfort that a lot of my associates and friends share. It is not easy living as a dark-skinned cosplayer, just like how it's not easy living as a dark-skinned person in this world.
That makes no fucking sense. That makes literally no sense. I work with a bunch of people that are darker than I am. I work with people that are lighter than me. I work from people that are from the other side of the world, and they show up in my little area. In fact, there was a lady from Germany just about 2 weeks ago that was in the place that I work at. Did I say, oh man, I feel really uncomfortable that you might try to be LARPing? I don't know. It's an example. It's not a very good one, but it's an example nonetheless. But again, I work around all of these different people. I don't think that they get treated any differently than another person. I would say that it's almost the opposite. Now, someone will probably go, well, Necro, that's at your job, but that's not in the real world. But it kind of is, though, because you have to still deal with the general public in some sense. And again, if I'm going to any place, because I used to work at retail, so I can tell you this, every customer is the exact same. I'm sorry, I don't distinguish between you. In fact, I'll give you a little bit of a, do the kids call it a black pill moment? But I used to work at GameStop once. I know, that's how every one of these things go. But I used to work at GameStop, and when Saints Row came out, I will never forget this as long as I live. When Saints Row came out, they had a list of games that people could pre-order. Now imagine with your brain of brains that, like, you know, Saints Row 2 and 3 are about to come out, and they had a list of games that they would suggest to people that were picking up the game. And the list was, I kid you not, it was NBA 2K something. And I said to myself, wow, that's pretty interesting. But I didn't do that. In fact, that was straight from the corporate office. I didn't implement it because I'm not racist. In fact, I just said, hey, here's a game that I like that's coming out, and then they would probably pre-order it. It's very simple.
The fact that I got inundated with comments from people talking down to me for just straight up saying without any context that this makes me feel uncomfortable, doesn't that kind of feel like people are impending on my ability to express myself by kind of shaming me for doing that?
Hey, you remember when I got shamed by people from The Guardian because I wasn't racist? And then I got shamed by, you could call them peers, but they're really not, by people that discounted my views because I was black, but not the other people's views and they were black? Very curious how that works, huh?
But I implore everybody to pause this video, go online, and look at some of the most popular black cosplay posts on the internet. Like the ones with the most traction, the most likes, and read through the comments. Or listen to the stories of other cosplayers that have to deal with constant backlash from other people for just existing. Not even having a strong opinion on anything, just presenting themselves in a way that they feel comfortable in, or trying to show their respect for a character as best they can, and yet getting slammed and ashamed for it.
No, I'm just not going to do that. And you're probably sitting there, dearest viewer, and you're probably about to click off of the window, and you're like, well, this guy's just not going to take any opinions from this guy. And you're right, I'm not. And there's a reason why. It's because I'm not so terminally stuck online that I have to go out of my way to be mad about something. If I saw this show up, and let's say I hadn't started the show yet, let's say that I have not watched My Dress Up Darling whatsoever, and then this scene comes up, and I see that people are talking about it, I still don't care. I don't have to worry about what other people have to think about something because I know what I want to see. If I don't care that people are cosplaying characters and they are black and the characters that they're cosplaying aren't black, I also don't have to care. These are things where you just have to pick your own battles. You don't have to care. By the way, these anime characters, they're not real. I know that we keep going over this whenever it comes to something like lolicon shit or something, but at the end of the day, none of these things are real. This character is cosplaying a character in their universe that is just a little bit darker than they are. And I don't see a problem with it. Again, you're trying to make this such an issue where there isn't one. And maybe it's just me and my weird sensibilities here, but I don't have to care or be offended for anyone else. If the black cosplayers are getting shit on, I feel sorry for them. I truly do. But I'm not going to go look it up because I don't participate in it, so I don't fucking care. That's as simple as it can get. And if you feel offended by it, that's perfectly fine. You can be as offended as you want to be. But when you're presenting this and you're telling everyone that we need to make a different term for blackface so that way it doesn't distract people from the main things that we're talking about, that just sounds like racism with extra steps. Especially the way that you convinced everyone before this part of the video that this character was a little weird because they wanted to cosplay as a character that was a little bit darker and they were a prisoner. Again, that makes you look more racist than the people that you're accusing of being fucking racist. You're just not saying the word racism because you want to look good for the people. I don't care who is white, black, brown, yellow, fucking green, or whatever the fuck they are. I don't even care if they have a penis, vagina, hang on, what's the word that people use? I don't care if they have a pussy or any of that shit. It doesn't matter to me. If your cosplay looks good, then I'm gonna probably think it looks good regardless of whatever gender you want to be. So then again, this doesn't matter to me. I don't have to go seek validation or this weird like, oh my god, these people are being absolutely rude. I better do something about this. I'm not fucking Batman. I don't care. I don't.
It's funny that Inoui's sister seems very plugged into social media. I wonder if she's seen any of those hate-filled comments towards people other than her sister. Or maybe her sister does get some comments because of her petite figure. That's possible. And the thing is, it doesn't even have to always be racism. It could be fat phobia, homophobia, misogyny. Let's not pretend that there aren't a lot of really really ignorant and backwards thinking people in the cosplay community, in the anime community, etc., that make it very hard for certain groups of people to just exist.
But you can also just ignore them. Those people are in the minority, and to think that these people are in these communities en masse is kind of fucking weird and ignorant. Because again, they're not in big numbers. These people are very, very small, or they're internet edgelords. Again, I think everybody that you're describing and yourself need to go outside and just, I don't know, feel the sun hit your fucking skin or something.
So, to all of you arguing this slippery slope argument, I ask you, can you please, if you're showing that same amount of energy for these people that are so intimidated to take that first step into cosplay because of the horror stories that they hear, or if they do take that first step, I hope you'll be there by their side to uplift and support them when these people come out.
From the words of the wise, you can't be the top dog if you're steady acting like a pussy.
If anything, this whole argument about whether what Kitagawa did was blackface or not, isn't even the first conversation we should be having. The main conversation we should be having is, I wonder why so many cosplayers feel uncomfortable about this.
Do you know the reason why that's not the first question that gets brought up? Is because you made it a point to make it about it being blackface and how uncomfortable you are with it. So I don't need to hear what your reason is if you're already giving me the explanation beforehand. With all of the sighing that you're doing and all of this signaling about how this is racist, all you're saying is, I feel uncomfortable because this is blackface. And then when you give it to them that way, no one has to ask. That is always going to be the last question they ask. No one fucking cares because you're already tainting them with the whole idea that, man, this is a little bit disturbing and uncomfortable that these characters are trying to be darker. So that's why it doesn't get brought up in the first question, asshole.
And after they tell you, oh, it's because my experiences led me to feel uncomfortable about this particular thing, maybe we should start figuring out why those experiences are so bad in the first place.
I can tell you one good reason. It's that people are stuck online. They want to always be online and be connected. That's just the world that we live in. And to say that we don't would be dismissive. But you also don't have to look at every single thing that happens online either. I could just as easily unplug and just disappear from YouTube for a year and come back like I just came out from underneath a fucking rock.
Will we ever get a point where darkening your skin color in this way is acceptable? To quote John Mulaney, a lot of people are going to have to get cool about a lot of things really quickly.
Yeah, that statement cuts both ways. So if you're not cool with people doing something that you don't personally approve of, well then you better go ahead and strap it in. Again, this cuts both ways. And it's only for the sane people. If you're not cool with people doing something that darkens their skin to be accurate to the cosplay, you better get hip with that shit right now. In fact, you should have been hip with that shit yesterday. Now, I don't know about you, but I think people are going to be just fine without your opinion, and they're going to just cosplay whatever they want.
Obviously, there are some things that aren't worth getting uncomfortable about, but I think there is enough reason here for people to just say, hey, I would like it if we got more away from stuff like this because it's not really that creative or constructive, or at the very least, it highlights all of these other issues that never get addressed during these conversations. I would like us to live in a society where we can all just kind of stand up together.
But instead, here you are telling people how divisive they should be. I mean, in a weird way you are, but in general, I guess you want them to come together, but only if they just don't darken their skin for the accuracy segment of it. But again, you're talking more about the West because no one on the East is really giving a shit what you say. They're going to cosplay whatever they want, and without threat from you.
I have no control over what people like Kitagawa or other Eastern cosplayers do. I can be upset and disappointed by it. I can distance myself from it.
Distance yourself from cosplay that is infinitely more popular in Eastern countries because an anime did a thing that you didn't like, and that's why we're making this video. Well, I guess there's a starting point for everything.
I can even sit down and maybe talk to them about that if people are willing to listen. Maybe the opinions of schmucks like me don't matter. I get it.
Well, I mean, you're the one who said it, not me.
I just find it very, very ironic that This is literally what the episode this takes place in is about. When we get to the end of the episode and they're literally on their way to do the cosplay, Gojo stops her and says, hey, I don't think I can shoot this cosplay with you because the cosplay shows so much skin and is a little intense for someone like him. He doesn't feel comfortable doing that. And at that moment, Kitagawa needed to make a choice. What mattered more to her, doing the cosplay on her own or cosplaying and doing things with Gojo?
Yes, dearest viewer, if you've made it this far, then congratulations. I don't know if you could just sit here and listen to me talk all day, but it's exactly the direction you think it's gonna go in. It's going there.
At the end of the day, Kitagawa chose Gojo over cosplay. We know how important cosplay is to this girl, and the fact that she's basically saying cosplaying isn't worth it if you're not there, that's a very big step in their relationship too. This is pretty much the definitive turning point, I would argue, when this manga becomes less about the cosplay and more about pursuing the romance between these two. It's very much like cosplay is an important aspect of it and the technical stuff is still there, but it's more about using it as a vehicle to advance the relationship between these two people, both as relationship partners and as creatives.
Now, I know what you're going to bring up, but I'm going to tell the people that are still watching this and or listening to it that this whole episode was about how showing too much skin made him a little uncomfortable. Now, that's not the same as, well, you're cosplaying a character that's a little bit too dark, you probably shouldn't do that, that's not a good look. These are not the same thing, and I hate that you're going to try to make these look like the exact same thing.
Which I think is interesting and I think is a great message, and it's very well written, and god damn it, why did this have to be in this episode?
And if it weren't in this episode, then where would it be appropriate? I think that either you don't understand writing or you just wanted this to be a completely, well, we need to talk about this, or maybe it shouldn't exist at all. Would you have been fine if she were cosplaying a fucking alien and she were green? Because that would be kind of appropriating alien culture, technically. I don't know. I thought that one would hit a little bit different.
Replace being uncomfortable with the sexiness of a cosplay with anything, really, and the message I think still works here.
No, it still works if you're on TV, because in the real world, the results would be a little bit different.
I just find it funny that more people aren't talking about that message of the episode.
That's because you live in a bubble where the only thing that you see about anime is usually people talking about something. So it's either very positive or it's something very negative. And the only thing you found was this. And again, you're on Anime News Network, which, by the way, doesn't treat people that might be a little bit differently thinking properly. And you're reading their comments. And of course, you read something else probably, who fucking knows. But you live in this bubble where people have to respond this way. They can never just be normal. And when it comes to the message of the episode, people still liked it. The message of the episode is that this thing, because it was making him embarrassed, he just thought that it was a little weird. But again, she chose the right option. Now, if this were literally anything else, like, hey, I think that you might be offending someone, I don't know, man. You're going to have to make a case for that one because most people don't care. But I guess if we were to go based off of anything, I mean, the Will Smith slap did kind of happen, and that was over a joke too, so maybe you might be right on the nose with this one.
Especially since if we're talking about respecting a character and treating these characters like they're actual people, I do genuinely feel like if I sat down with Kitagawa and explained this to her, she would completely understand it.
Don't worry, that segment was almost over anyways, and I'm not going to watch the end of it. You can check it out later. But why are we trying to treat anime characters like they're real people? They're not. They are drawn lines on a screen, and they do not live and breathe. In your mind, they might, but they're not real. So I guess big ups for defending anime characters that don't exist and are purely entertainment material. But who am I to say? I'm just here on the YouTube making funny, stupid videos and unfunny, stupid videos. But I guess the ultimate takeaway is you can cosplay as whatever you want. I don't think anyone will stop you unless they're this guy. Unless they're the cartoon Cypher, then he's going to be a little upset that you might put on a little bit too much foundation to look, dare I say it, dark. And again, this made him uncomfortable. It made him so uncomfortable that it made him write an entire review about it to complain that it's not blackface, but he refrained from using blackface, but he's been bringing it up as blackface. And then he decided to then make this video, which, by the way, the original one is just as long as this video. So if you're really looking for something to watch, you can watch the entire 46 minutes of his and the entire hour of this one. But that's all I really have to say is just do what you enjoy. People aren't listening to you anyways, Cypher guy, but, you know, big ups to them too. I guess it's just don't be offended by things that don't really fucking matter. And unfortunately, I should have learned that lesson a long time ago, especially when I started YouTube. But with that being said, you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will hopefully see you this summer at Anime Expo 2022, live and in person. And we're going to do like a meetup, not in the convention, but outside of it, because I don't know if I want to spend $140 yet. But you guys take care.